Hey everybody, this is another podcast for the Phoenix Pharaoh blog. We're going to have a mega sports / Michigan football podcast today with a very good friend of mine and one of my most favorite people to talk sports with in the whole world, my good friend Kevin Carpenter, who is living on the West Coast now, 3 time zones away. So let's give Kevin a call. Kevin Carpenter.
What's up, bruh?
My dude. Tell me, how are you?
I'm pretty good, man. How about you?
Very good. Hey, this sounds really clear coming through. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I think this should be good.
So, hey, tell me, how's San Francisco?
It is nice. It is pretty much constant nice weather. I mean, it gets foggy, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like seriously, like once 4 o'clock hits, like this really heavy, like dense fog just like creeps over the city from the ocean.
Uh-huh.
And it gets really spooky kind of sometimes, but I like the weather for the most part. Dude, the Mexican food is so good.
Nice.
Like, I just got these enchiladas from this place in a pretty like heavy Mexican area in the city, and like, they were the bomb.
Very good. When I was staying in California, there would be times where I would wake up in the morning and there was so much fog that I couldn't see 10 feet out of my window. Like, it was wild.
Yeah,
it just happens. So what's the sports scene like in the Bay Area?
That's a good question. That's a very interesting question. I think that this is just a hypothesis. I think that that there are less people who are super engaged with sports out this way.
Sure.
And I think that a lot of that I would attribute to the weather. I think that growing up and living in the Midwest for so long, like during the winter, I mean, you can do things outside, and there are plenty of recreational things to do outside, but not year round, and you're not going to stay out as long. So I think in the Bay Area, a lot less people are interested in sports for the sole fact that they have grown up doing different things during those times of the year.
Interesting.
I would say that that any like the Giants are very popular. They've been very popular in recent years as a baseball club because of their success. 2 World Series in 4 years, whatever it was.
Yep.
And
I think 2 and 3. Yeah.
2 and 3. Yeah, you're right. Giants fever usually, but they've been really terrible the second half of the season so far this year, so that's kind of died down. But overall, I think there's a lot of transplants, right? There's a lot of people like me who came from other places, super engaged in sports, and so there's plenty of bars for like a specific team. Like, for example, this weekend to watch the Michigan football game, there's 3 different bars in the city that are all going to have every game on this season. So I'm going to go to one of those and see a bunch of alums and watch it with them.
That was my next question for you. Is the plan for this Saturday and the Saturdays beyond?
Kind of just picking up one of the 3 bars that are going to show the game. I think there's the place I'm probably going to go to this weekend's up in the Marina, which is north of where I live, closer to the north edge of the city. And it's an Irish pub. I forget the name, but I have a few alum friends who are going to want to go to. So we're going to meet up, and the game is at 9 o'clock our time here. So it's going to be an early morning. I don't know if the bar is going to be serving any drinks yet, but we'll see what happens.
Good question. I can tell you from going to one of the quote Michigan bars in the Los Angeles area for the national title game in basketball. Really, really good time. Besides the fact that we lost, really, really good time. So it gets fun. But speaking of which, Kevin Carpenter, college football approaches. I mean, this is just an exciting time of the year. Technically tomorrow. We're taping this on a Wednesday. Technically tomorrow, college football starts. Please tell me, how excited are you for this?
I am so excited. Tomorrow is North Carolina, South Carolina.
Yep.
And that's probably the biggest game of the day tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And that, I mean, one, the hype, deserve it or not, for Javion Clowney coming into this season, like, just gets me excited alone. But college football, it's good that it's the season's as long as it is. But man, when it comes back, it's just it's just so exciting. a lot of storylines this season, both for us as Michigan people and just as college football fans. A lot of different things coming into this one.
Absolutely.
A lot of conferences, no clear-cut favorites. Would you agree?
So, yeah, I was actually going to bring this up to you. Just kind of thinking about and researching for this podcast and revealing, in air quotes, I have my fingers up, my predictions for the national championship game, who's going to win the This is hard for me. There are a lot. I feel like this is one of the most wide open years on a conference-to-conference basis and a BCS basis.
Definitely. A lot of question marks. I'm tempted to even say that I have a big question mark for the SEC, but part of me also wants to say, Alabama's king until somebody takes them out.
Yeah.
So, but, seriously, the Pac-12 is going to be super exciting this year. The Big Ten is probably as wide open as it's ever been.
Yep.
The ACC, there's a couple teams in the mix there, but honestly, the Big 12, I don't think anybody cares about anymore. But
absolutely.
But yeah, no, definitely a lot of big choices, and in terms of a national champion, you're seeing all sorts of pundits throw their ideas around, and there doesn't really seem to be a consensus top two in the country, which is cool. I really like that.
Yeah, so let's get started with the hometown team, the Michigan Wolverines. I got to admit, now I usually come out with my preseason predictions really early in the summer, even like in May, so at the end of spring. And 2 years ago, I predicted 9-3. They went 10-2. Okay. Last year, I predicted 8-4. They went 8-4. Okay, so I'm having an incredibly hard time with this team, predicting a win-loss based on the schedule going through the teams. But Kevin, I got to say, I really like this team. I think this team has a lot of potential. I really do. And I didn't even say that last year. I really thought we were going to be mediocre last year, and we proved to be. There's something about this team this year, though, that I'm really excited for.
I think that a lot of people in Ann Arbor and outside of Ann Arbor would agree with you, Steve. The schedule is super. It's pretty favorable. I know that there's a couple big away games, but for the most part, getting Notre Dame at home and Ohio State at home,
and
Nebraska at home.
Yep.
Those three are probably the games with the biggest question marks on them.
Yep.
In my opinion, and having all three at home bodes well. So those are games of concern. The games of concern away are at Penn State, because I'm not ready to count them out of anything yet.
Agreed.
And at Northwestern, even though that's practically a home game because Northwestern doesn't have any fans. If we're going to be 100% serious. But, and it's funny, we're just going to jump right into this. And,
yep.
For any of our Spartan compadres out there, sorry for saying this, but I don't understand why I see so many people predicting Michigan to lose at Michigan State on November 2nd. It makes no sense.
So, as I mentioned, I've been going back and forth a lot with some of these games. I've been pretty confident for a while that this game at State's going to be a win. I haven't gone back and forth with that one. I don't see it. I don't feel it. They just picked their quarterback. We'll see how long Maxwell even stays the starter. But I agree. I think Michigan at Michigan State, that's a win for the Wolverines.
You want to start at the beginning of the season and go through game by game, or how do you want to do this?
Let's do it.
All right. So game number 1 this Saturday, Central Michigan Chippewas. What do you think about this one?
That's a win.
That's a win. They have a good running back, Tipton or Zipton or something, that people have been hyping up. But it's they're still a MAC school. Brady Hoke was a MAC guy for a while, and he's been trying to be really diplomatic. They're a great MAC school. We have a lot of respect for them, but that's just coach talk. I really see backups in by the middle of the second half, or the third quarter, I guess you could say.
Totally agree. Next week after that, the second night game under the lights against the Fighting Irish.
Ooh,
now
man.
we had a shot last year. Obviously, this team went to the national championship game. We threw 4 interceptions on 4 straight passes in the end of the first half. Lost by like 6 or something like that. having been at that first game as you were, there was nothing like the atmosphere at that game, the first night game in the Big House a couple years ago. I believe the attendance was 114,804. I don't know if they'll break that this year, but Devin Gardner's taking over this year, so I'll just mention that. I think Devin's going to be great in this offense. My worry is not Devin Gardner. My worry is Al Borges. So I'm going to take a win against Notre Dame at home for Under the Lights Part 2. But just to kind of foreshadow what I feel about the Wolverines this year, I foresee good things from Devin. I just hope the play calling is up to par.
No, and that's really a concern this year, and we should dive into that a little bit more, the offense. But just to stick with this game, I think one of the biggest things that gives me confidence is who's taking snaps under center for the Irish, Tommy Rees, who is an absolute atrocity. I mean, maybe he's not an atrocity, but
who had a football untouched a couple years ago, just threw his arm back and lost the ball, and had he not done that, they probably would have beat us at home that year. But, well, Tommy Rees has a really, really high turnover prone.
Yeah, he turns the ball over a lot. He seems to be easily confused by different defensive fronts, and Michigan's shown willingness under Greg Madison to really show some different looks to opposing offenses. And Tommy Rees, I mean, he has more experience under his belt, but he wasn't the starter last year. I mean, he was put in for Everett Golson during the Michigan game last year down in South Bend, and he wasn't spectacular there either. I think that Tommy Rees is going to cost Notre Dame this game in some respects, but just to talk about the other side of the ball for Michigan, the Michigan defense should be more than respectable. I mean, you have Blake Countess coming back at corner, some uncertainty at safety because Courtney Avery's out for maybe 3 weeks with after a scoped knee, but Frank Clark has had all the hype in the world.
Everyone's talking about Frank Clark. He's big news right now.
6'2", 277 pounds. Apparently can run a 4.5 40. That's laser timed.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken, like superhuman numbers, right? And I mean, among just those guys alone, amongst pretty solid will linebacker and James Ross, and the linebacking core overall being really solid, I just think that, especially with Tommy Rees under the gun for Notre Dame, this defense should be the start of the havoc that's going to be put on by the Michigan defense this year. So it should be kind of a coming out party for a very good squad.
Yeah, two things about that. Number one, since this is now year 3 under the Hoke era, I've just come to expect, hey, this is a Madison Hoke defense. It's going to be good. It's going to be top 20 in pass defense. We'll see what they do with the running defense this year. And probably the biggest thing that Hoke's defenses have had so far in his era, just 2 years, is quarterbacks that can run. Really good mobile quarterbacks. And as opposed to Golson, at least, Tommy Rees should not pose such of a threat in that era or in that area. So I expect a win under the lights against Notre Dame.
Agreed. So we're 2-0.
So the next 2 weeks, versus Akron and at Connecticut. I will take both of those as W's.
Unless LeBron James comes into play QB for Akron. Akron's a W. And at Connecticut, yeah. I remember a few years ago when Connecticut came to the Big House.
Yeah.
And this was the rededication and record crowd at Michigan Stadium. I remember people talking like, I don't know, this Connecticut team, they might be pretty good. Like, Michigan better not sleep on them. Absolutely smoked them. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't even a contest.
I believe that was the last opening game in the Rich Rod era.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. A lot of hype going into that game, and quickly put that to rest, I think, by the second half. So that would put us at 4-0. Yep. Then we go home against Minnesota for homecoming. I don't know. Minnesota's not been good. A lot of question marks. We got to overpower Minnesota at home on homecoming.
Yeah, I think especially, coming off a bye week on the 28th, October 5th against Minnesota. Devin came out against Minnesota last year and really, really slung it. One really bad interception, but Minnesota couldn't even keep Michigan's receivers in front of them down in the secondary. So Minnesota, I think, is a much better program than they were a few years ago. I think that they probably make a bowl game this year, but they're not at the top tier of the Big Ten yet, and this game's going to prove that.
Okay, so that would put us at 5-0. Now, the following week at Penn State, I will admit to you, in the past 5 months, I have really, really, really gone back and forth with this game. This is the game I'm most focused on, trying to predict what Michigan's going to do this year. And I finally settled on saying, I think this will be the first loss of the season for the Wolverines. I'm going to take a loss at night, or 5 p.m. at Penn State. I just see us having... I think it's going to be a close loss, Kevin. It's one of those games we go in and we think we can win, hopefully win the next couple games, going undefeated to Michigan State 2 weeks later, and Penn State just rises up for that game and takes it by maybe a field goal.
I think that that's a very reasonable thing to say. I'm looking at the depth chart now for Penn State. And I mean, this is a solid team. So, it's still not too long after the sanctions against Penn State that shouldn't down the line really affect their depth at pretty much every position.
Right.
But right now, it looks like their starting quarterback, at least by week 6 or maybe week 7, whatever you want to call it, is going to be between Tyler Ferguson and Christian Hackenberg. Christian Hackenberg, highly touted. Incoming freshman for the Nittany Lions, 6'3", 220. He's a grown man and he's 18 years old. Tyler Ferguson, true sophomore. Right now their depth chart says either or. That's the one thing you have to wonder, and maybe Penn State figures this out by the time they play Michigan. But will inexperience at the quarterback position after Matt McGloin has left? He plays for the Raiders now, I think. But anyway,
yep.
Will inexperience at the quarterback position really throw a spike in Penn State's plans? And it's hard to say. This is a toss-up for me, and depending, I think it's reasonable to call it a loss just because coming in against the Minnesota team that might pose some issues. Penn State, I'll say that's a loss for Michigan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping it's going to be an exciting game. I'm hoping, maybe Michigan wins a close one, maybe takes one in overtime. But I just have one of those gut feelings that this is one where Penn State walks in, boxes in the ring with us, and just hits us in the gut, and we lose a close one. And then we move on to Indiana the following week. That one is at home. Kind of the same thing for Minnesota. Indiana on the rise. But just not there yet. So I would take a win over Indiana at home.
Yeah, this is one of those games, depending on how the Penn State game goes, this could be a real trap game. Last year, this Indiana offense put up real offensive numbers. I mean, like serious offensive numbers. They put up some goods and a lot of points on some very good teams. And
that was losing their original starting quarterback, a very talented dual threat.
Yeah, I mean, they put up 27 on Michigan State. They put up 49 on Ohio State last year. They put up 31 on Illinois. Not a terrible team. But they were still only a 4-win team. So
right.
The defense isn't there yet.
Right.
I'm confident enough in the Michigan offense to say that this is a W.
Okay, so the next week we've talked about this one, the MSU game. Again, just to reiterate, they have quarterback issues right now. They just chose Maxwell out of 4 guys. They're going to have a good defense. That's how Michigan State plays right now. Mark D'Antonio under Pat Narduzzi, their defensive coordinator. But we haven't won in state in a while. We have lost 4 out of the last 5. I think this is the year that Brady Hoke takes his crew into East Lansing and leaves with a win.
I agree with that on pretty much all counts. You have to wonder, I mean, the real issue with...
Heart health benefits?
Whoa, sorry. The real issue... What is going on? Sorry.
Those are our sponsors.
Yeah, our sponsors, right. Big issue for MSU last year was their offensive coordinator and it was just a stagnant offense. I mean, they had to run the ball with Le'Veon Bell like over 30 times against Eastern Michigan last season.
Yeah, he was their workhorse because he had to be.
He was an absolute workhorse, and that's I couldn't blame him for leaving for the NFL after his junior season because I mean he was losing serious mileage on those legs of his. But yeah, Dan Ruchar, the offensive coordinator, he's still in place at MSU, and he needs to figure out what his offense is. Otherwise, Michigan State is going to over-rely on their defense, and I think that there's good enough offenses, including Michigan's in the Big Ten, that it's going to be hard for them to win some games. But yeah, this is a Michigan win. I don't understand why so many people are giving Sparty the edge here.
I agree. It is one of those rivalry games. Sometimes when those games come around, you throw everything else out the window, but I see that as a win for the guys in blue.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because, like, it's not like I think, Spartan Stadium, like, that's like a really difficult place to play or the crowd is super loud or anything. It's like, it's not even like going to Michigan State is like an inherently difficult road game. It's not Iowa. It's not Wisconsin. I don't know. I just think it's funny.
Well, and again, last year we did hold their offense. I think we won 10-9. So we held their offense to 9 points, and I expect an offense in a pro style system under Devin Gardner can at least double that 10 figure. So we'll see. We'll see against Michigan State. We'll see how their defense does the first couple of times. But again, some of their schedule is favorable as well. So maybe they come into that game with 0 or 1 losses. Maybe Michigan goes into that game 0 or 1 losses and kind of amps that rivalry up. So that'll be exciting.
Absolutely. Rivalry games are always good.
Next week, November 9th, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, 2 years ago, I mentioned that I was 1 game off of my prediction. I thought we were going to lose to Nebraska the first year they came into the Big House, and lo and behold, I think we beat them something like 45-17. I mean, an absolute shellacking.
It was one of the best games I've ever seen.
It was so much fun being at that game. They're bringing back Taylor Martinez. Their offense is going to put up a ton of points. We'll see how they do against Michigan's defense, but a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the ball, what they're supposed to be known for.
Absolutely. I think that Taylor Martinez could pose some issues if Michigan lets him outside of the pocket.
Yes.
But I think can score on him. Last year, if it wasn't for Russell Bellamy having the choke job of the century after Denard Robinson went out with that elbow injury that ended up being way worse than anybody ever expected, Michigan wins that game. But this game's in Michigan Stadium. This Michigan team should really have an identity by then, barring any unforeseen injuries or unforeseen circumstances earlier in the season. I'm going to call this a W.
I would agree with you. We will see on November 16th what Devin Gardner can do against the Black Shirts, and I expect a good game from Devin Gardner. We'll mention at this point. By then, we should know Fitz Toussaint or Derek Green or whoever running back is taking most of the snaps or a 2-back system or whatever. We'll see how they do against the Nebraska front 7. I don't expect a blowout like a couple years ago, but if we can keep the ball in our hands, not turn it over like we did last year with those 3 interceptions from Bellamy, I also expect a W for Michigan.
Yeah, and let's talk about the running backs after we finish the schedule.
Okay. Week after that, the next 2 games, at Northwestern and at Iowa. Now, Northwestern was another, I can't call it a trap game really, because this was a 10-win team last year, and it did take a Hail Mary at the end of the game to beat them last year to go into overtime. And I went back and forth with this one, kind of like with Penn State, but I'm going to take Michigan to beat Northwestern at Northwestern. As you said, there's always a large Michigan contingent who goes to that game with the alumni base out in that area. Not really a home crowd, but definitely a crowd that gets behind the opponent, Michigan Wolverines. I will take a win at Northwestern.
Samesies, I think that this Northwestern team will be very good, and I could see Michigan losing this game if they're not prepared. That's a fine program that Pat Fitzgerald has thrown together.
Well, very well coached.
Yeah, very well coached. I mean, it was a little bit of bad coaching at the end of last year's game that caused them to lose at Michigan Stadium. But I think that Michigan goes in and kind of just rolls. I mean, honestly, all these predictions at this point are me assuming that Devin Gardner, 1, is healthy, and 2 is at least 3/4 of what I think he can be.
Yep.
So if that's the case, it should be a good result.
And kind of as we were saying, the Big Ten is pretty wide open this year. You can imagine a scenario where, let's say, we do happen to lose Nebraska. That could be one of those cases where we lose to Northwestern the very next week, 1, because Northwestern might be that good, and 2, we let Nebraska beat us twice, and who knows, maybe Northwestern ascends to the top of the Legends Division. But things shift back and forth. We'll take the win at Northwestern, and as I mentioned, the week after that, at Iowa. I mean, Iowa's a tough place to play. We have not won at Iowa since 2001. Lost a couple years ago in Brady Hoke's first year with 4 chances at the end zone, down 8 at the end of the game. But Kevin, Iowa has just unraveled since. Just not good right now.
I mean, Kirk Ferentz is one of the longest tenured coaches in the Big Ten now, and one of the most highly paid. And this dude has let this program fall completely apart.
Yep.
Like, pink locker room for Michigan or not when they go to Kinnick Stadium. This Iowa team is terrible. Like, Ricky Stanzi is now walking through that door, ladies and gentlemen. This is a win. I don't care. I don't care how hard of a place it is to play.
Yeah,
if Michigan loses this game, they've lost at least 3 other games in the season already.
Totally agree. Maybe it's kind of due to an injury or something. I just don't see this team, if the systems are right and if we're playing like we're supposed to be playing. There's just no way we lose to Iowa, even though it's at Iowa. So I expect the first win on the road against Iowa since 2001. Now, November 30th, the final Saturday in November. We think we will probably be 10-1 at this point at home versus Ohio.
Beat Ohio.
This is going to be a big one. Now, let me just talk about Ohio for a second. I think this is one of those scenarios in which this team under Urban Meyer really can be better than last year. And if we recall, last year they went 12-0. But I just don't think there's any way that they go through that schedule undefeated again before Michigan. It's hard enough to win 12 in a row. I don't see winning 25, 26 in a row before getting to Michigan, or 22 or 23 before they get to Michigan. That is just so hard to do. Maybe it's Northwestern, maybe it's Wisconsin. I think they stumble against somebody. So maybe these two teams coming into this game, each 10-1, or maybe one of them 10-1, and maybe Ohio 11-0. It's going to be huge.
It's going to be one of the most hyped up games we've seen in a while, and I know that College Game Day is already coming to Ann Arbor for the Notre Dame game. But man, if this is an 11-0, 10-1 matchup, or a 10-1, 10-1 matchup, you have to wonder if some national crew is going to come in from somewhere, because it's going to be one of the most hyped games in recent memory. This Ohio State team is coming into this season with a lot of distractions, right? I mean, one, having Urban Meyer as your coach these days inherently toes along a number of distractions, from the Aaron Hernandez story that's broken over the summer. He coached Aaron Hernandez back at Florida, to current Ohio State players having trouble off the field, staying in line, with multiple suspensions at the beginning of the season, and just the amount of magnifying focus that the media is placing on this team. You have to imagine that they'll come in losing 1 or 2, and you have to wonder, with a younger team, Braxton Miller is a younger guy. What does that pressure bring? And so I think this will be a hell of a game. I think that it has the opportunity to be a real classic.
So, agree with everything you said. In my prediction for this game, I'm very sorry to say, is a loss for Michigan. It pains me to say, Kevin, trust me, but I think Ohio walks into this game, like you said, it's going to be a classic. It's going to be a duel between boxers in the middle of the ring, punching back and forth. But I think both teams at this time will know they're going to meet the following week in the Big Ten Championship.
That's going to be amazing. I think that Michigan wins this game. I mean, based upon all of my predictions thus far, I'm basically predicting that Brady coached Michigan will, through the end of the season, still have not lost a home game.
Yes, yeah, I'm taking them. I would take this as the first loss in the Hoke era at home. Trust me, I hope I'm wrong. That's just my gut feeling. This is a hard year for me to predict anyway. I just feel like Ohio State walks into this game, takes us down at home. So I turn it around and feel that the next following Saturday, the Big Ten Championship, December 7th in Indianapolis, a rematch. Michigan is so heated up over the loss at home that we take down the Buckeyes and go to the Rose Bowl.
I think that no matter what, I think if Michigan makes it to the Big Ten championship game in Indy, I think Michigan wins that game. I think that the crowd will have a Michigan lean, just because of the number of alums. I think Michigan does in general travel a little bit better than OSU. But yeah, I think that Michigan getting to the Big Ten championship game is going to happen, and I'm really hopeful that they win it. But at that point in the season, all these predictions are based upon a very ideal world for me where people don't get injured.
Yep.
And offenses work as they're supposed to, and players are well suited for their positions on defense. So if that happens, if this Michigan team is constructed like I think it is, Big Ten championships in the works.
I agree. So after going through the schedule, I will have them at 11-2 with a Rose Bowl berth, and you will have them at 12-1 at a Rose Bowl berth. Just again, this is a team that even before we see them is easy to like, and I really, really do expect high things for this team in the third year of the Brady Hoke era. So hopefully they follow through. I'm excited. Saturday, couple days.
I mean, this is really the first season I've come into where I'm thinking, basically I'm thinking Rose Bowl or bust. This is the first time I felt this way in a long time with Michigan.
Yep.
And I think Brian Cook from MGO Blog wrote a really great piece earlier this week about how basically everything for Michigan has finally come together. We obviously will miss the heck out of Denard in Ann Arbor, but Devin Gardner's, he's much more well suited for Al Borges' system. The defense is in place. There's real depth at many defensive positions. There's real depth on the offense too. I mean, right now on the depth chart, there are 6 running backs listed, and all 6 are going to travel. And some of them might only play special teams, but I mean, we're seeing Michigan get back to where we saw them for decades. And, the Rich Rodriguez era, a bit of a bump in the road, and some good and some bad came out of that. I sometimes think that it was worth it just to see Denard Robinson play in Michigan Stadium,
Yeah.
It's all coming together now, and this coaching staff has a real chance to make a mark this season. So I'm hopeful.
Seeing how this team is constructed under the coaching staff that they are constructed and how this season will go, that is a very, very real possibility that this is where Michigan gets back to how they used to be. So we will see. Again, it starts Saturday. And to wrap up the college football, if you have one, what are you thinking about the national championship game or who you think will win this year's title? Now, again, as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, it seems like such a wide open year. Obviously, both of us just discussed OSU losing to Michigan, if not once, maybe twice. So I think Ohio State will be out of the running this year, even though they could be a better team than last year. I wasn't going to say Alabama, Kevin. I thought, they're going to the SEC. Sometimes you just win a game. So I was looking at some of the SEC teams and their schedules. Florida will play 4 ranked teams, and these are all teams that are ranked at this moment. Georgia will play 4 ranked teams. LSU has to play 5 ranked teams this year. Alabama is currently scheduled to play 2 ranked opponents. I'm going to pick Alabama to take one of the spots in the final BCS championship game. I didn't want to. I feel like they got to stumble somewhere. But even if they do, they're only playing right now 2 ranked opponents. A 1-loss Alabama team is probably going to get into the BCS title game.
I was going to say Alabama because I can't think of a better team in college football. I mean, I know there's some questions with their offense this year, but they still have T.J. Yeldon. Like, that guy is an absolute boss. Like,
Saw him live last year at the Cowboy Classic. Unreal.
And A.J. McCarron is still there as a real veteran quarterback, and he's not just a game manager. You know, he can really sling it, I think. Some questions on the offensive line, but that defense is still a great defense. And I don't bet against Nick Saban until he proves me otherwise. Alabama is going to be in the national championship game. And
they always find ways to play true freshmen who make real impacts. I think it was something like they played 13 true freshmen in the title game last year. Just they find impact guys and they play them, and it just works out. So Bama takes 1/2. I was going through some other ACC teams, some Big Ten teams, some Pac-12 teams, some Big 12 teams. This is a matchup I've wanted to see for a couple of years now, and I wish the previous head coach was still there. Now I'm thinking between Oregon and Stanford, and I was going through their schedule as well. Stanford will play 5 ranked teams this year, one of them including Notre Dame, and Oregon will play 3. And they will not face each other, I believe, in the Pac-12 championship. I believe they're in the same division. So if Oregon can get by Stanford once, they may have a path as a undefeated or one-loss team into the title game. So I'm going to officially choose Oregon as my other half.
You know, I'm really tempted to pick a Pac-12 team, and I was at first really thinking about Stanford or Oregon, just like you. I think that this is a fairly common train of thought. But then I really kind of started looking at it, and I have a gut feeling that this Pac-12 is going to cannibalize on itself,
sure,
and eliminate pretty much any chance of any of them going to the national championship. It's a really hard division this year, a really hard league. I think that Oregon State upsets, at least one of Oregon, or I think Oregon State might upset Oregon. Oregon State gets a lot of good teams at home. I don't think Oregon State has any shot in hell of making it to the national championship, but somehow I think that it's going to be an SEC national championship this year, which would be extremely fitting for the last year of the BCS.
Yeah, very true.
And so if I'm going to pick another SEC team to play Alabama, and I'm pretty much only saying this because they do not play Alabama in the regular season, but I think South Carolina. This is perfect in so many ways. This completes the Jadeveon Clowney saga in a fitting way. And it's an SEC against SEC in the last year of the BCS, and they've won every single stinking one of them. So Alabama, South Carolina, Steve Spurrier gets into that national championship game, and who knows what happens in that. But
I like that pick.
It's narrative. It has a good narrative to it.
I thought about South Carolina coming out of the SEC. If it wasn't going to be Bama coming out of that conference, do you definitely think of South Carolina as being a possibility? Again, I saw them live last year as well in the Outback Bowl, and even though that was a close loss for the Wolverines, man, that defense is tough. I saw Jadeveon Clowney live. I saw that hit live. That's tough. So if it's not going to be Bama versus a Pac-12 team, or just a team that comes out of nowhere, like say if Texas just happens to come out of nowhere and go undefeated from the Big 12, it's going to be the ultimate ending to the BCS era with an SEC. And I'm like you right now. I'm going to take Bama to win it because who has proven they can beat them besides Texas A&M, and that was one time, and we'll see this year in week 3 if they can do it again.
Sounds like a plan. I just, how long can Alabama sustain this dominance? I don't know, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
And it sure has been impressive so far. So, switching over from the great talk on college football, so excited for that to come, let's talk about another sport that is happening as we speak, starting to get heated up on the way towards September and October, and that would be Major League Baseball, and especially our hometown team here, the Detroit Tigers. Stumbled a bit recently, including today. Although they did have wonderful, 12 or 13 game win streak a couple weeks ago. They have the best player on the planet in Miguel Cabrera, who is doing unspeakable things this year at the plate, and Max Scherzer, who is well on his way to getting a Cy Young.
Yeah, I mean, this team has the presumptive MVP candidate and probably the Cy Young winner, depending on how the voters take it. But, I mean, it's a heck of a baseball club. I think that they're in a rough patch right now for sure, and that Justin Verlander obviously is having a terrible year, not only by his standards, but by like being in the Tigers rotation standards. I mean, he's number 4 right now out of 5, and that's really bizarre.
And what's wild is this team has had the best. Their rotation is the best in the bigs in terms of a lot of stats, ERA included, and this is with Verlander having a very, very off year.
And it has to be scary for any team in the playoff hunt right now because, I mean, you have to wonder if Verlander figures it out before October, and this is all assuming the Tigers make the playoffs, which I truly believe they'll win the AL Central.
Yeah.
But if he figures it out before October, I mean, how do you beat this team? I know it's basically the same rotation as last year. You cut it down to 4, Anibal Sanchez, Max Scherzer, Doug Fister, and Justin Verlander. And put Porcello in the bullpen, presumably. But how do you beat that? I have no idea.
I don't know either. I mean, again, we have some great players at the plate. I love to see Iglesias now playing defense. We got Jackson out there for defense. Torrey Hunter's still a good defender. That side of the ball, that side of the game, we do pretty well in. But when it comes to our starting pitching, how do you beat them 4 times in 7? Now, obviously, we got swept last year against the Giants, but at least from the American League side, you have to really, really fear this rotation. And let me ask you, while this question's on my mind, if the playoffs started tomorrow and we're playing Game 1 of the ALDS, who's your starter?
Money Max Scherzer.
Yep.
I think that a bit of that. Well, actually, if you're asking me who I would put, it'd be Max. But I think Leland puts Max, too, because of a loyalty thing. He's been here longer than Anibal Sanchez, who actually has better peripheral numbers than Max. But, I mean, either of those guys, honestly, I'd be happy with. They've been excellent this year. I mean, truly, truly excellent. And maybe you lean Max Scherzer because his strikeouts per 9 is a bit better than Anibal's, if I'm not mistaken. But, I mean, you're kind of picking between two. You're picking between 2 great pitchers, so you really can't go wrong.
And as you mentioned, if we're going to slide Verlander down a little bit, let's say you have Anibal and Max 1, 2, however, and if you're going to have Verlander 3 or 4 with Fister, whichever one it is, even if Verlander hasn't completely figured it out just yet by that time in the playoffs, still, you're throwing him against someone else's 3rd or 4th best pitcher.
And that's exactly it. I mean, I don't think that Justin Verlander is much worse than any playoff team's 3rd or 4th starter unless he has a complete meltdown like he did yesterday.
Yeah,
a 44-pitch inning yesterday is what sunk the ship. And I don't think that happens in October. This team knows how to play in the playoffs, and that's what a lot of this comes down to.
Yep, so not even being a homer about this, being objective about it, I think this team has a great chance to once again make the World Series. Now, again, baseball is kind of like the NHL or maybe even the NFL, where when you get to the playoffs, sometimes it's just a crapshoot. You never know what happens. A ball bounces here or there, however it goes. I think this team has a serious opportunity to get to the World Series again. And right now, my gut is telling me I'm not so worried about their lull right now. It's August. You want to get hot at the right time. You don't have to be hot right now. They've already gone on their hot streak, and they already have the division almost in hand. I think this is a year where they can get it done.
I really do agree with that. I think that the pitching is right. I think that actually the biggest change this year, from last year to this year, is the bullpen. I think I'm a lot more comfortable with this bullpen this year. Some great acquisition work by Dave Dombrowski this year, who honestly, if I can talk about this for forever, but Dave Dombrowski has done a heck of a job.
Dave Dombrowski might deserve his own podcast one day. It's pretty amazing.
He is the man. But anyway, bullpen pickups, I think that no Jose Valverde to worry about. I think that Phil Koch has been really relegated to a very situational role. Drew Smyly in long relief has been good. Bruce Rondon, except for the hiccup every once in a while, has been serviceable in his role. And Benoit.
And Bondo has not been too bad. At least he had a great first start. He's back.
Yeah, no, Bondo's been great. He is back in business, and Benoit has been a very good closer. So I'm very comfortable with this bullpen in the playoffs. I think that you can do a lot with matchups with that. And the defense behind the pitcher, putting Iggy out there, as they call him, right next to Miggy, that really helps close a serious gap in the infield, especially when Tigers have so many pitchers who are prone to throw into ground ball situations.
Yep.
So it should really help.
And as we mentioned at that point, also in the bullpen that will help by that time, Porcello will also be out there in the bullpen for long relief if needed, or for whatever roles he will need to fill. So that can only help the Tigers. And we will sometime in September or October do a baseball-specific podcast because there's much more to talk about that. There are some other good teams out there too. Atlanta, the Dodgers, who also went on hot streaks this year. Even Tampa. We'll see how that goes, and maybe we'll be talking about a Miggy Triple Crown again. But for right now, that's probably good on baseball. Let's hope the Tigers can get it done. Let's move to another league that's about to start. They have one more preseason week for that matter, and that would be the NFL. Again, football is coming around and it feels good. It's fall. I don't know what the fall is going to be like out in San Francisco, but you know how it is here. The leaves are going to start changing color.
Mm-hmm.
The Lions. Everyone is going back and forth about the Lions. I don't know nearly as much professional football as you do. I will admit that. I see the talent on their team. I saw they went 10-6 a couple years ago, and I saw they went 4-12 last year when expectations rose. I think they get caught in probably a lot of close games again this year. If they can play offense in the first 3 quarters like they did not last year, I'm going out on a limb, and I don't know how much evidence there is to support this, but maybe the Lions can make a wild card spot this year.
I would generally agree with that. I think that a wild card spot is definitely in reach. The NFC as a conference is about as good as it's been in the past decade, I'm willing to say. And the NFC North is about as good as it's been in recent memory at the very least. You have at least 3, maybe all 4 teams in the NFC North are going to be competitive in every game they play, and every game they play against each other. And so that's the one thing you wonder about is how are the Lions going to play against Jay Cutler? How are the Lions going to play against Aaron Rodgers on defense? And, what is Matt Stafford? Is Matt Stafford going to take that next real step to being the franchise quarterback that he's supposed to be? He's being paid like a franchise quarterback now. He got a contract extension over the offseason that has solidified his spot in Detroit for a few more years minimum, and he's getting a pretty penny for it. The really shining star things about this team, the defensive line. Everybody who has seen them practice or really paid attention in preseason games has said that their front 4 of Ziggy Ansah, or Ansah, I guess you say, Nick Fairley, and Ndamukong Suh, and Jason Jones is legit. I mean, wreaks havoc on offensive lines. If they can maintain that and kind of help out both the linebackers and their deep backs, that will mean a world of difference. And speaking of the secondary, I feel better about this secondary than I felt in recent memory. So long as Louis Delmas stays healthy and Glover Quinn as strong safety is more than serviceable. I mean, this team, every NFL team has holes. In a salary cap world, you're never going to fill every hole with an above average starter. That's the fact of the matter. That's the fact of the market. But this Lions team has an opportunity to be good, especially on defense. Concern on offense stems from what we've seen in preseason so far, with an asterisk. The first string offense, I think, has thrown for one touchdown. They've gotten some touchdowns on the ground, but Matt Stafford has looked absolutely lost out there without Calvin Johnson going deep. Yeah. Not even going deep, just out wide.
Yeah.
And Calvin Johnson comes back for the beginning of the regular season, and you assume that he and Stafford have such a good rapport at this point that it doesn't really matter that he missed the preseason. But Matt Stafford being able to hit his targets is going to be huge. The one super positive that I really want to hit home with this team is Reggie Bush. Getting Reggie Bush to come from Detroit, especially for such a low cap hit, is like unbelievably awesome. He fills the hole that Javid Best was supposed to fill when he was drafted out of Cal. Javid Best, unfortunately, and you feel so bad about it, but he's done playing football because of numerous concussion issues. Really, really sad story, but glad that he is, taking his health and his safety as a priority. But Reggie Bush coming out of the backfield as a receiver, or the number of things you can do with him as really a flex option, should provide this offense the spark that it was designed to have. And so Reggie Bush is one of the couple reasons that you really have to be optimistic about this Lions offense.
Yeah, totally agree. In situations where Matthew Stafford is going to need someone to bail him out, and if he just can't get the ball to Calvin Johnson to let Calvin do what he does, you can hit Reggie Bush on the low route. Let him run it. They've done a ton of that, a ton of screen passes for Reggie in the preseason. Again, it's preseason. Let Reggie run the ball. It's either going to make or break it for the Lions this year, because you know what Calvin Johnson is going to bring you. You know what that defensive line is going to bring you. You hope you know what Stafford's going to bring you, and if he can prove that he's worth what he's been paid to do. And again, that's a team that only won 4 games last year. So you hope you put Reggie Bush into the mix, adds that extra spark. We can start throwing more touchdowns, even open things up more in the passing game. With Reggie being the threat there, throw it to Reggie when you need to, and the Lions can stop other teams. Hopefully we can take the lead into the fourth quarter and count on your defensive front. And again, like you said, your good defensive backs to hold the game for you and win some this year.
Yeah, I think that there's a really good opportunity. This team feels like a 9-7-ish team, plus or minus a game. I mean, 8-8 is kind of, would be a reasonable guess, I think. 9-7 reasonable. 10-6, if some things go really well. But this is a solid team. I think that they are. It's funny. It's funny being a Lions fan, right? And thinking man, are we going to go 8-8? Or are we going to go 9-7 this year? When 5 years ago it was unthinkable to even dream of being 500 at the end of the season.
Yeah, we were wondering if we were going to win 1 game or 2, or where we were going to draft in that next year's draft
end of December or end of November, and you're already thinking about the top of your draft board. So.
Yeah, it's nice that hopefully that's not where we are again this year. But like you said, in a very tough conference, and maybe in the toughest division in that conference and in football this year with the other teams there. So let's hope around 9-7. It'd be wonderful if they can pull out a 10-6, get a wild card spot, but it also wouldn't surprise me if we were around that 8-8, 7-9 area with just the competition we're going to face in our own division there. Do you have yet a preseason Super Bowl prediction? Was it a couple of years ago? I think you at least predicted one of the teams, maybe both, correctly preseason that were going to be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I probably did. I forget what my predictions were, but I've been good at it lately, honestly. Let's see. This season, I do have a prediction. And part of it, it's going to make me sound like a San Francisco homer, but I mean, really coming out of the NFC, show me a better team than the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, that dynamic offense has proven to be relatively unstoppable. Maybe some coaches over the offseason found a way to slow down Colin Kaepernick, but I'll believe it when I see it.
And you get a full season of Kaepernick now.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of concern with the Niners because of Michael Crabtree being out for at least part of the season.
Yeah.
But you still have Frank Worth, your running back, and that defense is really great. And Jim Harbaugh has proven to be more than adequate as an NFL coach. So I like the Niners coming out of the NFC. Out of the AFC, man, this is a real difficult one. Part of me thinks that the New England Patriots are somehow going to bamboozle all of us again. And that he won't care who his targets are passing. He won't care about who his running backs are. And they're just going to do their thing, go 12-4, and get to the Super Bowl because of that experience and Bill Belichick mostly. But also, I mean, very similar team, the Denver Broncos coming out of the AFC.
Yes.
This is basically my prediction for the AFC Championship,
Yep.
Denver and New England, and what a classic that'll be, right?
Absolutely. Yep, go ahead.
I think that's really a toss-up. Denver is going to finally have Von Miller back after his suspension for substance abuse. It's been rumored just to be that the dude can't stop smoking pot, but whatever. And a few more pieces will fall in line for Peyton. If Peyton's arm strength isn't an issue after all the problems he's had, I lean to Denver just because of some more veterans on that team. So if I had to pick right now, I would say Denver, San Francisco.
And of the two, who would you take? In New York. In cold New York.
Man, that's hard. I'm going to say Denver. I think that Peyton Manning gets his second ring, matches his brother Eli in Eli's own city. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be amazing. So, again, knowing less much about the NFL, nowhere near as well-rounded in education in the NFL as you, my picks this year, same as you, I'm going with Denver out of the AFC, and I'm going to take the Seahawks out of the NFC. I just like what they did last year. We'll see what Russell Wilson. I really, really like Russell Wilson, even from his days back in Wisconsin, and they've had a good defense lately. I think somehow they get to the playoffs. In Denver, coming from the Mile High City, playing in that stadium in New York on the Super Bowl, I'm going to take, like you did, Peyton Manning next year, or this year I should say, to win the Super Bowl. But it's such a popular pick every single year to say New England, and I feel like every year I want to say New England, and every year they're at least playing for a chance to get into the Super Bowl, but this year I will take the Denver Broncos, but never, ever, ever count out Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah, no doubt, and I like your Seahawks pick. I think I like that defense too, man, and they have really tall physical corners that really limit the pass, and Russell Wilson, I don't know how he does it. He's so small. I mean, I might be bigger than him, but he can spin it.
He's just amazing. He knows when to hand it off. He knows when to run.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good stuff on football. So let's wrap it up here with, man, it just gets me excited, with a brief overview on what our boys, the Motown Pistons, have done this summer. And Kevin, have they done a lot?
Detroit versus everybody.
I mean, I am telling you, my man. We're talking about, Mo Cheeks. Okay, Mo Cheeks. Okay, for one. My man, Chauncey Bubba Billups back in the red, white, and blue on the Detroit bench. You got Brandon Jennings now playing the point guard. Got rid of Brandon Knight. We signed Josh Smith as a free agent, pairing him with Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond, and my main man, number one, Sheed, as a coach.
We're getting the band back together, dude. It's awesome. Bring Tayshaun back in.
Someone call up Rip Hamilton.
And Rip Hamilton, man, that'd be a lot of fun actually. It'd sell some tickets, no doubt.
Yeah.
But this is gonna be a really fun team. I'll tell you. I'm really happy that they got rid of Brandon Knight. I think that was a lost cause in a lot of ways. Maybe somebody else will shape him into a good, bench role player. But Brandon Knight, I was never convinced that he was going to be a starting point guard in the NBA. I'm not even convinced he's a point guard at all. I think he might really be a shooting guard, but whatever. Brandon Jennings shoots way too much. I think Bill Simmons or Zach Lowe, one of them from Grantland, wrote that the Pistons are going to be the best NBA league past crunch time.
Yeah.
In the last 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah, that was Simmons, I think.
Yeah, Jennings and what's his name, Josh Smith are just going to be competing to see who can take the most off balance.
Fall away 17-footers. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great.
At the very least, this is a team that makes the Detroit area want to turn on their television and watch basketball again. At the very least, so I'm at least thankful for that, because a lot of Pistons fans had to go away for a couple of years, and hopefully they'll be back out this year. We'll see how much Andre Drummond progresses this year, because this dude is on his way to being a real stud. Already, Kevin, already one of the best offensive rebounders in the game. He just gets offensive rebounds nonstop. It's amazing. Passes them out. We'll find a Brandon Jennings. We'll find a Billups. We'll see what Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can do. He's going to get... if this team stays like it is, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is going to get a ton of spot-up shots off of offensive rebounds in his career, off of Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, and Andre Drummond. So, hopefully able to make an impact in that way. Now, when you look at the East, I think we can agree that the Heat, the Indiana Pacers, the Chicago Bulls, and probably the Brooklyn Nets are the 4 teams that are definitely going to be better than the Pistons.
Definitely is a strange word. The Nets, I waffle on a little bit. We'll see what KG and Paul Pierce end up being in Brooklyn. The Pacers and the Heat, I think, are going to be very good. I'll tell you, though, there's some really interesting articles on some advanced statistics sites, such as, wageswins.com. What is it? Where is it? I had it up here. Wagesofwins.com. And they have the Pistons, based upon a number of things, in the number 2 slot in projected wins in the East. They project the Pistons to win anywhere from 53 to 57 games.
Wow.
Number 2 in the East. The numbers really favor the Pistons, what they did in this offseason. I think that the Pistons end up falling anywhere between 2 and 5. I think that the sky's the limit for this team, other than beating Miami.
Yeah, that would be awesome to see, actually. I just feel right now that the Indiana Pacers are in a better spot with their franchise. Obviously, the Heat are the Heat. For teams like, I don't know, Kevin, where people are saying that the Atlanta Hawks are going to be better than the Pistons. Like, they have the Pistons ranked 7th and the Atlanta Hawks ranked 6th. The Hawks are not going to be good. They're not going to be a playoff team. Maybe I'm just crazy here, but this team is not good. They just lost Josh Smith. They have, Jeff Teague and Al Horford? Kyle Korver? And they just hired the guy from the Greg Popovich, somewhere off of his coaching tree. The Pistons, the only other team that I would say that they would go back and forth with, so I'm thinking Brooklyn and the Knicks. I think that 4th seed, that 4th, 5th, and 6th is going to be open, changing between those 3 teams, because I'm still not convinced on the Knicks. And who knows, maybe KG, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, maybe they don't show up at all next year. It's possible. So maybe we go up to 4th, maybe we're down to 6th, but I think definitely a playoff team.
Oh, definitely a playoff team. I don't think you get this much talent on your roster without making the playoffs. The one concern is cobbling all of this together, right?
Yep.
There's going to be some really, really interesting rotations in the backcourt that, you have Chauncey back there, you have Kentavious or Caldwell-Pope, you have Rodney Stuckey is still in existence. He'll get traded before the trade deadline, though. I have a strong feeling.
My, oh my. Please.
So, just speaking of that, actually, the Pistons are in a really good spot right now because they have 2 expiring contracts that are going to be huge trade pieces at the deadline. And Charlie Villanueva, a cancer to his team and the league.
Yep.
And Rodney Stuckey. And I think that the Pistons, if they're in that 6th seed range and that 5th seed range, have a really good opportunity to pick up whatever missing pieces they have because they have these expiring contracts. So that's something that gives me some positivity.
And there are rumblings going on that even though we got Brandon Jennings, if that experiment isn't working out through, let's say, December or January, and the Pistons are sitting at 8 or 7, Joe Dumars still might want to take his pieces and maybe trade for Rajon Rondo still. Who knows? Who knows?
Dude, if that's the case, if they end up trading Rondo, the Celtics, in the middle of the season, the Celtics are going to be so bad for the last part of the season. They might be super, super, super... it might be difficult for them to win a game. But besides that, I think you're right. I think that Rondo is still a target. I think that Jody likes him. I think that Jody embraces players with perceived attitude problems in the league.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that in one of his press conferences, that Detroit definitely doesn't shy away from guys who have an edge to them. And look through their history, that's absolutely true.
And I think that this is kind of showing in this new blueprint for this team. Think about that front court. Think about being a point guard or a shooting guard, playing Detroit and trying to drive into the paint. Like that has to be so frightening. You have three guys, like three monsters, Andre Drummond, Greg Monroe, and Josh Smith there, just ready to pack you.
Yeah.
Like what are you gonna do? And I know that they're not gonna run three bigs all the time, but when they do, good luck getting into the paint.
Right.
And that's one of the challenges with this team is it's gonna be a balance between protecting the paint and forcing teams to shoot, and playing a bit smaller. But it's going to be they're going to lose some games, I think, sometimes by forcing teams to shoot and those teams making their shots.
Yeah,
so it'll be
right.
interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun team to watch, throwing these pieces together. They're going to have some rough parts in the beginning. Hopefully by the season will start right at the end of October, beginning of November. Hopefully come December, January, February, they start really hitting their stride, becoming a well-oiled machine, and then we'll really find out what kind of team they're going to be. And speaking of Detroit, I don't know if you've noticed, for whatever reason, the past 2 or 3 days, NBA TV has been showing all kinds of old Pistons championship run games, 89 games, 1990 games, the 04 clinching game, and then today they happen to be playing the 2005 Game 7 against the Spurs, where I completely forgot how that game went, but we were tied with the Spurs going into the fourth quarter and just absolutely collapsed in Game 7. And it just made me think, any team that makes it to Game 7 gets, quote, close to a championship, and the Pistons obviously were close, should have won that Game 5, couldn't have won it all, whatever, that's old news. But it just takes me back to teams who have had the championship in their hands and out of nowhere collapse in the last couple seconds and lose it. And I couldn't help but think of the 2013 San Antonio Spurs. We just have to touch on the all-time great NBA Finals. In their hands, Kevin. I think they were up, it was 5 or 6 points going to the free throw line with 28 seconds left.
It was an anomaly. I mean, it was really bizarre, and it was free throws, man. I mean, they're part of the game, and sometimes people don't like how much effect they have on the game and fouls have on the end of the game, but my goodness, under a Greg Popovich team, how does that happen? I have no idea.
I don't know. And I try to think of championship series or games that I've seen where a team is this close to winning. And the first thing I thought of was the year the Texas Rangers played the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series. That was 2 or 3 years ago. And Texas was winning in Game 6, bottom of the ninth, had the Cardinals down to their final strike a couple of times. Then, David Freese hits a 2-out, 2-strike triple, hits the home run in extra innings, and obviously the Cardinals went on to win in 7 games. I think of that time where a team is just so close and has it. But there was something about that game, Game 6, where I was sitting there. I've almost never been that engaged into a game where I didn't have one of my teams playing in it. And just to watch it fall apart in front of my eyes was just a pure spectacle. Legacies were forever changed in that last 24 seconds.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head there to the point where I really don't have much to add. It was a really bizarre thing to watch from, the Spurs have a legacy under Greg Popovich of being, a well-oiled machine, and they hit a clunker there. But Braun got his ring.
So to wrap it up, the question I want to ask you, that's 2 in a row for the Heat, 3 straight finals. Here comes the final year of LeBron's contract with the Miami Heat. Do they three-peat?
I think so. I think that this is their last chance with their team, how it's built to do it. It's not as much of a sure thing for me as last season was. I was really, really confident last season. But I think that this is their last chance and that they embrace it. I think LeBron is in his prime and that he keeps on getting better and that they do three-peat. And then, what happens after that, who stays in Miami and who goes, there's a lot of big question marks there. But I think they cap off a really interesting period in the NBA with a three-peat. And I know it's not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, but 3 in a row is a hell of an achievement if it happens.
I'm going to agree with you, especially because a couple years ago, I predicted the Heat would win 4 straight. I'm going to stick with it. You've got LeBron in his prime. That's pretty much enough to beat almost every single team in the league. And as we saw, when Dwayne Wade has to come through, Dwayne Wade just comes through. So I'm going to pick the Heat as well this season. It's going to be another fun basketball season. I can't wait. The Pistons will be watchable. You got Kevin Durant. You got all those great teams out there. Sports are fun, Kevin. Sports are just a good time.
No, it's that time of year. I'm even I have the NHL to look forward to too. It's like it's a wonderful time of year, and I will be kind of glued to my TV most nights between watching the Pistons on NBA TV and watching the Tigers in the playoffs, and football on the weekends. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I hope that we continue to recap sports events together.
Absolutely. We're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's see how the next couple of weeks of Michigan football turns out. We'll have some more talks on them. Definitely some Tigers talk. When the NBA comes around, definitely some of that as well. And hope things are going well for you out there in San Fran. We certainly miss you here, but damn, am I happy for you that you're on the West Coast. And I think we touched everything. Anything that we missed?
Not really. Thanks for having me on. I think this is a really good outlet for both of us, and let's just keep the ball rolling. Yeah.
Sounds good, my friend. Best of luck to you out there on the West Coast in your job, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, take care, bud.
See you, Kev.
Peace.
Okay, that was Kevin Carpenter. Again, thanks everyone for listening. Much appreciated on the Phoenix Pharaoh blog, and we'll catch you next time.